Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we'll be taking a deep dive into the world of Prakhar Gupta.
Oh, an interesting choice.
He's this popular Indian content creator, and you've given us an interview with him.
Right.
It's packed full of these really thought-provoking ideas about personal power, masculinity, and reflections on the state of the world today.
Sounds like a lot to cover.
Ready to unpack it?
Absolutely. Prakhar Gupta is a fascinating guy. He blends philosophy and psychology
Yeah, I saw it.
and social commentary in a way that really gets you thinking.
Right.
He's not really about giving you the answers,
Yeah.
but more about pushing you to ask those really key questions.
Yeah, and I was struck by just how direct and unfiltered he is.
Yeah.
It's no wonder he has such a large following, especially among young men.
Oh, interesting.
It seems like his background as a content creator has really shaped his approach to communication.
Definitely.
I mean, he started out creating content as just a hobby,
Right.
but it quickly took off.
Yeah.
Now he's a full-time podcaster.
Wow.
So it's clear he knows how to connect with an audience and make these complex topics engaging.
For sure. What I find really interesting is how he's now focusing in on this idea of personal power. And he actually describes it as becoming the largest tree under which most people can find shade.
That's a great image. I love that.
Right.
It really speaks to his focus on guidance and support, especially for younger people, like those navigating their 20s.
Yeah, it's such a crucial time.
It is. And it's all about building yourself up so you can then be that source of strength for others.
Exactly. And you know what's fascinating is how he connects this idea of personal power back to his background in evolutionary psychology.
Oh, okay.
So he's looking at our drive for self-improvement through this lens of survival and reproduction.
Interesting.
Which are like the core principles of evolution.
So he's saying that our desire to become the largest tree
Yeah.
is actually rooted in our primal instincts.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
He's arguing that by cultivating our strengths and achieving success, we're not just fulfilling some abstract self-improvement goal.
I see.
But we're actually tapping into these deep-seated evolutionary drives to thrive and pass on our genes.
That's a very interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Makes you think about personal growth in a whole new way.
Absolutely. And this evolutionary lens also really informs his whole perspective on religion. He points to the concept of the God gene, the idea that humans might be hardwired for spirituality.
So even if you don't consider yourself a religious person, you might still have this innate drive to connect with something bigger than yourself.
Precisely. And Gupta suggests that religion itself could even be an evolutionary adaptation.
Really?
Yeah. He argues that it offered survival advantages in the past.
Like what?
Well, he suggests that humility, which is a trait often encouraged by religion, could have been beneficial for early humans. So those who acknowledged forces greater than themselves might have been more cautious.
Right.
And avoided unnecessary risks.
Oh, I can see that.
And that, of course, would have increased their chances of survival.
Yeah, it makes sense. Recognizing the power of nature and not assuming you can control everything would definitely keep you safer.
Especially in a harsh environment.
Right.
Exactly. And then from a more social perspective, the sense of community fostered by religion might have played a really crucial role in survival, too.
Okay, how so?
Well, stronger social bonds would have meant better cooperation and support.
Right.
Essential in challenging circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. So religion may have helped our ancestors survive, both physically and socially.
It's fascinating, right?
It is.
And this leads right into Gupta's ideas about the human condition.
Okay.
He contrasts the Eastern and Western conceptions, noting the East's emphasis on social duty and the West's focus on individual spirit.
So he's highlighting that tension between what we want as individuals
Yeah.
and what's expected of us by society.
Exactly. And he ties this back to his ideas about power, suggesting that finding the balance between those individual desires and societal expectations is key to understanding the human experience.
Makes sense.
He even touches on the idea that spiritual starvation might be more prevalent in times of material abundance.
Yeah, that's counterintuitive.
It is.
We often assume that as societies become wealthier,
Yeah.
people naturally become more spiritually fulfilled.
Right, but Gupta's suggesting that might not be the case at all.
It's a powerful thought. It makes you think if the pursuit of material wealth can make us spiritually poorer.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it all ties back to his emphasis on personal power. He outlines 4 key pillars.
Okay.
Physical strength, intellect, material success, and spiritual depth.
Gotcha. Like building a well-rounded foundation for a good life.
Precisely. But what's interesting is how he positions spiritual depth as something to explore after achieving material success.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He argues that young people should focus on fulfilling their worldly desires before delving into the deeper truths.
I can see that. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Exactly.
You need to take care of your basic needs before you can reach self-actualization.
Precisely. He even uses this rather memorable analogy. Every time I meet priests, all they want to talk about is sex. And every time I meet prostitutes, all they want to talk about is God.
Wow. He's not afraid to make bold statements.
He isn't, is he?
But it definitely gets your attention.
It does.
Makes you think.
For sure.
So it sounds like he's advocating for this natural progression of personal growth, focusing on material well-being first, and then exploring spiritual depth later in life.
That seems to be his view. He believes it leads to a more balanced approach to personal development.
Makes sense.
But Gupta isn't just focused on just individual growth. He's also concerned about the potential pitfalls of groupthink and its impact on society.
So he's highlighting how our individuality can get lost in the crowd.
Yes. He's concerned about the diminished intellectual capacity of collective decision-making.
Interesting.
Arguing that individuals within groups often just delegate their thinking to authority figures.
So blindly following the crowd can stifle innovation and critical thinking.
Precisely. He believes that individuals are often more intelligent and capable when thinking independently, rather than relying on the perceived wisdom of the group.
Gotcha. And this lack of independent thinking can have negative consequences for society as a whole.
Absolutely. He argues that groupthink can lead to a suppression of original ideas and a stagnation of progress. He even touches on the idea of cultural hegemony, where dominant groups use their power to shape societal norms and values, often to the detriment of individual expression and critical thinking.
So he's saying that we need to be aware of the pressures to conform and actively cultivate our own critical thinking skills.
Exactly. He believes that a healthy society needs individuals who are willing to think for themselves and challenge the status quo.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And this all ties into his observations about the role of national myths in shaping a nation's identity and character.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. He uses a surprising example, the current reevaluation of Gandhi's legacy in India.
It's unexpected, right?
It is. I thought he was universally revered in India.
He is a revered figure, but Gupta points out that there's this growing sentiment in India that Gandhi's emphasis on nonviolence might have been co-opted by the West after World War II.
Oh, how so?
The idea is that it was a way to maintain that global order and suppress dissent.
Interesting.
Rather than a genuine embrace of Gandhi's philosophy.
So he's saying that even historical figures and events can be interpreted in different ways.
Exactly.
Depending on the social and political context.
Precisely. And he contrasts this with what he sees as a decline in American exceptionalism, suggesting that the U.S. might be losing its sense of national purpose and identity.
I see.
He even makes this bold statement, quote, "America is at the peak of its power, but that idea of American exceptionalism has gone."
Wow. It sounds like he's suggesting that a strong national myth is crucial for a nation's vitality and direction. And he seems to be concerned that America might be losing its way.
That seems to be his view. And what's even more intriguing is how he links this perceived decline to a concept he calls spiritual starvation.
Oh.
He notes the irony that America, despite its material prosperity, seems to lack a sense of deeper meaning and purpose.
It ties back to his point about spiritual starvation being more prevalent in wealthy society.
Exactly. It's like material abundance can't fill that spiritual void.
Right.
Precisely. And he contrasts this with the rise of a new Indian assertiveness on the world stage.
Okay.
He describes India as still being in its 20s as a nation.
So, well, full of energy and potential.
It almost sounds like he's suggesting that the torch of global leadership might be passing from west to east.
Perhaps. But it's important to note that he doesn't romanticize India's current state.
Oh, okay.
He acknowledges those challenges posed by poverty and inequality.
Right.
And he cautions against assuming that India is inherently more spiritual than other nations.
So he's saying that India's rise is not guaranteed and that there are still many obstacles to overcome.
Exactly. He emphasizes that true progress requires this balanced approach that considers both material and spiritual needs.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This leads to another question. Does Gupta think masculinity is under attack?
He certainly seems to think so, particularly in the West.
And why?
He argues that the capacity for violence, a traditionally masculine trait, is being targeted as a means of controlling younger generations.
That's a bold statement. Does he elaborate on why he thinks this is happening? He suggests that while feminist movements initially focused on combating specific harmful behaviors, they've kind of evolved to target all aspects of masculinity.
Interesting.
He actually uses the term feminization of men to describe this perceived phenomenon.
Could you elaborate on what he means by that?
Well, he offers the example of men being encouraged to be more emotionally expressive, something he believes is not inherently a male thing.
So he's drawing a distinction between healthy emotional expression and forced conformity to gender stereotypes.
Exactly. He seems to be saying that men should be allowed to be men without having to fit into a predetermined mold.
Right. And he also points to declining testosterone levels as further evidence of masculinity being under attack.
He does, citing factors like diet, lifestyle, and a lack of purpose as potential contributors.
But couldn't those factors affect women as well?
They certainly could. But Gupta focuses specifically on men in this context. He contrasts the situation in the West with India, where he believes masculinity isn't facing those same pressures.
Interesting. So he's arguing that different cultures experience these challenges in unique ways.
Precisely. He seems to be advocating for a more nuanced approach that recognizes the value of both masculine and feminine traits, as well as the importance of individual expression within a societal framework.
It's a complex issue, and he's raising some thought-provoking points.
He is.
It sounds like he's saying that we need to find a balance that allows men to embrace their masculinity in a healthy way while also respecting the evolving roles of both genders in society.
Absolutely. He's challenging us to move beyond simplistic narratives and to consider the multifaceted nature of gender and identity in the modern world.
And his observation about the connection between declining testosterone levels and lack of purpose is really interesting.
It is, isn't it?
It is. He's saying that men, particularly in the West, might be suffering from a lack of meaningful challenges and goals. He suggests that the drive to build and achieve that's historically associated with masculinity has been stifled by a culture of complacency and consumerism.
He uses that great line. Say you start doing something and you start failing, getting back up and doing it. Very painful. But say it starts working out, you're much more motivated.
Yeah, it's a perfect example.
Right.
He's suggesting that overcoming challenges and pushing ourselves beyond our limits can lead to a greater sense of freedom and self-mastery.
Exactly. And he argues that this self-mastery is crucial not just for individual well-being, but also for creating positive change in the world.
He's connecting personal growth to societal progress.
He is. He even suggests that suppressing individual freedom can have these negative consequences for society as a whole.
Interesting.
He believes that stifling individuality can lead to a decline in societal vitality and innovation.
And he sees this happening in both the East and the West, just in different ways.
Exactly. He points to India, where he believes individuality has always been under attack.
I see.
He contrasts this with the West, where he sees masculinity under fire. His point is that both extremes, suppressing individuality in the East and masculinity in the West, can be detrimental to a society's overall well-being.
It's a fascinating perspective. He's not taking sides in the culture wars, but rather pointing out that the pendulum can swing too far in either direction.
He is. He seems to be advocating for a balance between individual freedom and social responsibility. Suggesting that both are necessary for a society to truly thrive.
This all ties back to his emphasis on finding balance between individual desires and societal expectations, between material wealth and spiritual fulfillment.
You got it.
Yeah.
He's urging us to move beyond simplistic either thinking and embrace the complexities and nuances of the human experience.
It's a call to think critically and to find our own unique path to personal power and freedom.
And speaking of cultural differences, Gupta has some intriguing observations about those as well.
Oh, like what?
He makes a fascinating distinction between cultures that prioritize individual rights and those that emphasize social duty.
That's a key difference between many Eastern and Western societies, isn't it?
It is. The individual versus the collective. And he argues that this difference in values has a profound impact on people's worldviews, relationships, and roles in society.
Yeah, I can see how it would influence everything from parenting styles to views on leadership and success.
Exactly. He even suggests that these cultural differences can affect a society's levels of innovation and entrepreneurship.
Really?
He uses the example of India,
Okay.
where he believes that the strong emphasis on social duty can sometimes stifle individual creativity and risk-taking.
So he sees that as a potential downside of collectivist cultures.
He does. He contrasts it with the West,
Okay.
where there's a greater emphasis on individual expression and self-reliance, which he believes can foster innovation and entrepreneurship. But as always, he cautions against romanticizing either extreme.
He's always emphasizing the importance of finding balance.
Right. He argues that both individualism and collectivism have their strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
He seems to be advocating for a more nuanced approach that recognizes the value of both individual and collective well-being.
So he's not saying that one culture is inherently better than another, but that we can learn from each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. And he challenges us to consider how our own cultural backgrounds shape our perceptions and beliefs.
Oh, it is.
He even suggests that the increasingly globalized world is leading to a clash of cultures.
Oh, how so?
As different values and ways of life come into contact with each other.
Right.
He uses the term ideological corruption to describe the negative consequences of this clash.
What does he mean by ideological corruption?
He's talking about the confusion, conflict, and decline in social cohesion that can result when different cultures with vastly different values are forced to coexist.
I see.
He points to the rise of identity politics and political polarization as evidence of this trend.
It's like he's saying that we need to find a way to bridge these cultural divides.
Yeah.
And develop a shared understanding of what it means to be human in a globalized world.
He is. He's challenging us to move beyond simplistic us versus them narratives and embrace the richness and complexity of human diversity.
That's a tall order in today's world.
It is.
But it's certainly an important goal to strive for.
It is. And he even suggests that learning from other cultures can help us better understand our own strengths and weaknesses.
How so?
He shares a striking example. When I go to America, I see you all parentless and alone, and I feel this spiritual poverty that you guys have.
It's a powerful statement. It highlights how different cultures prioritize different values and how those priorities can have a significant impact on our experiences and perceptions.
Exactly. He's not saying that one culture is inherently better than another, but that we can all benefit from stepping outside of our own cultural bubbles and learning from each other.
So he's encouraging us to approach cultural differences with curiosity and humility rather than judgment or fear.
Exactly.
It's a call to embrace our shared humanity, even as we celebrate our unique cultural identity.
Precisely. And he believes that this kind of open-mindedness and cultural exchange can be a source of strength and innovation for societies.
It's an optimistic perspective.
It is.
Suggesting that by learning from each other and working together, we can create a more vibrant and harmonious world.
It is. And it reminds us that diversity, when approached with understanding and respect, can be a powerful catalyst for progress.
Now, Gupta also makes some bold predictions about the future of spirituality in the world.
He does, doesn't he?
What are his thoughts on that?
He argues that as societies become more prosperous and technologically advanced, there will be an inevitable search for deeper meaning and purpose.
Okay.
He even suggests that this search might lead to a revival of traditional religions.
Interesting.
Or the emergence of new forms of spiritual practice.
It's interesting that he sees this happening even as technology advances.
It is, isn't it?
We often think of technology and spirituality as being at odds with each other.
He challenges that assumption. He believes that technology, while potentially distracting, can also be a tool for spiritual exploration and connection.
Okay.
He even uses the term spiritual rationality to describe this emerging trend.
What does he mean by spiritual rationality?
He's talking about a kind of spirituality that is grounded in both reason and intuition.
Hi.
A spirituality that embraces both scientific inquiry and the search for deeper meaning.
So it's not about rejecting science or technology, but about integrating them with our spiritual aspirations.
Exactly. He believes that science and spirituality can complement each other, each offering valuable insights into the nature of reality and our place in it.
And he sees this as a positive development.
He does.
A way to address the spiritual starvation that he observes in many parts of the world.
Precisely. He believes that this spiritual revival driven by both reason and intuition, has the potential to bring greater meaning, purpose, and connection to people's lives.
That's a hopeful vision for the future.
It is.
It's a reminder that even in an increasingly complex and technologically driven world, our spiritual needs remain as important as ever.
Absolutely. And Gupta's perspective encourages us to embrace both the material and the spiritual aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
Finding a balance that allows us to thrive in all dimensions of our being.
Now, given his observations about the decline of empires and civilizations, I'm curious to hear his thoughts on what we can do to prevent such decline in our own time.
It's a big question, isn't it?
It is. What does he say?
Well, he doesn't just attribute decline to external factors like war or invasion.
No.
He argues that the seeds of decay are often sown from within.
He's talking about those internal factors we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
Complacency, loss of shared values, and erosion of leadership.
Right. He uses a powerful analogy.
Okay.
A tree that grows too large and top-heavy.
Eventually collapsing under its own weight.
It's a vivid image that captures the fragility of even the most powerful empires and institutions.
It is. And he believes that even the very successes that lead to a civilization's rise can, if left unchecked, contribute to its downfall.
In what way?
He argues that material prosperity and technological advancements, while initially beneficial, can lead to a decline in moral fiber, a loss of purpose, and a weakening of social bonds.
I can see that.
He even points to the example of ancient Rome,
where
the influx of wealth and luxury contributed to a weakening of the empire's foundations.
It's a cautionary tale.
It is.
It suggests that material progress without a corresponding emphasis on values and social cohesion can ultimately be self-defeating.
Exactly. He describes this process as a gradual erosion of the values and standards that once made a society great.
Interesting.
He even uses the term cultural hegemony to describe how the ruling elite can use their power to shape public opinion and suppress dissent. And this can lead to a decline in critical thinking and a weakening of the social fabric.
He believes so. He offers a striking example, quoting both Marx and Gramsci. Marx said famously, "Religion is the opium of the people." Gramsci said, "Also sports, also entertainment is what we use to enslave the gladiatorial combat." All that. It keeps people away from thinking about their suffering so they don't overthrow the bosses, right?
That's a sobering thought. He's suggesting that even seemingly benign forms of entertainment and distraction can be used to manipulate and control the masses.
He is. And he argues that this kind of cultural manipulation, when combined with other factors like complacency and a loss of shared values, can create the conditions for a civilization's decline.
It's a complex interplay of forces.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's saying that decline is rarely caused by a single factor, but rather a confluence of internal and external pressures.
That's a key point. He believes it's often a slow and gradual process, a gradual unraveling of the social, cultural, and moral fabric that holds a society together.
So it's not just about external threats, but about the internal strength and resilience of a society.
Exactly.
What does he suggest we can do to bolster that strength and resilience?
Well, he argues that we need to be vigilant in safeguarding the values, institutions, and social bonds that are essential for a society's long-term health and well-being.
Okay.
He emphasizes the importance of critical thinking, civic engagement, and a commitment to the common good.
It sounds like he's calling for a renewed focus on individual responsibility and civic virtue.
He is. He believes that a healthy society requires citizens who are informed, engaged, and willing to hold their leaders accountable.
That's a powerful message, especially in our current age of rapid change and uncertainty.
It is.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of our societies.
Exactly. He's urging us to be active participants in the process of social and cultural evolution rather than passive observers.
This is all incredibly thought-provoking.
It is, isn't it?
It's like we've gone on a journey through history, psychology, and even philosophy.
It's fascinating.
All through the lens of Prakhar Gupta's unique perspective.
He offers a really interesting way of looking at things.
He does. But before we get too deep into the decline of civilizations, let's take a step back and hear about where Gupta himself is headed.
Sounds good.
What's his focus for the future?
Well, on a personal level, he expresses a desire to settle down and start a family.
Oh, wow.
He mentions his plans to get married to his girlfriend, who is from Mexico.
Oh, cool.
He's also committed to refining his skills and developing his organization through consistent effort and disciplined routines.
That's interesting. He's talked about embracing the boring and mundane.
Yeah.
Recognizing the power of consistency and dedication.
Exactly.
Seems like he's found a new kind of fulfillment in structure and routine.
It does seem like a shift from his earlier self, who he described as being in love with the variant and interesting.
Right.
But it speaks to his growth and evolution as a person.
Yeah.
He's discovered what he calls the insane hack in life, called consistently doing the same thing until the rewards of compounding start showing up.
So he's embracing a more disciplined approach to life, focusing on building systems that support his goals.
Exactly. And of course, he remains passionate about sharing his message of personal power with a wider audience.
I can see that.
He sees himself as a philosophy communicator, drawing inspiration from figures like Osho.
Okay.
He even mentioned spending a significant amount of money ordering all the books Osho ever spoke about.
Wow, that's dedication.
It is, right.
It sounds like he's a lifelong learner, always seeking knowledge and refining his understanding of the human condition.
He is. And he even offers a bit of advice for his listeners.
Oh, what's that?
He encourages them to spend 15 minutes every day connecting with loved ones,
Okay.
building stronger relationships, and cultivating a sense of community.
That's great advice.
He emphasizes the importance of family and human connection, stating that the individual is important, but remember that it goes beyond. Notice the this and the that in your context.
He's reminding us that we're not just isolated individuals, but part of a larger web of relationships and connections.
Precisely. He's urging us to recognize the importance of those connections and to invest in them.
And what about his final thoughts? What message does he leave us with?
He leaves us with this powerful statement. The best tool we have against the decline of civilization is our intellectual power, is our self-awareness, is our psychological mastery, is our philosophical mastery, is our financial material, and our bodily mastery, and then our spiritual mastery as well.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. It sounds like he's saying that true power comes from cultivating all aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
Physical, mental, material, and spiritual.
It is. And he's challenging us to take ownership of our personal development, not just for our own benefit, but for the betterment of society as a whole.
It's a powerful message of empowerment and responsibility.
It is.
He's suggesting that by cultivating our own strengths and wisdom, we can contribute to creating a more resilient and thriving world.
Exactly. He's urging us to become active participants in shaping the future.
Right.
Rather than passive observers.
That's an inspiring note to end on. It makes you want to go out and start cultivating your own largest tree, doesn't it?
It does. And it makes you wonder what other insights he has to share about how we can navigate the complexities of the modern world and contribute to building a better future.
Well, luckily for us, this deep dive isn't over yet. We've only just scratched the surface of Prakhar Gupta's fascinating worldview. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore his perspectives on power, freedom, and cultural differences in more depth.
So picking up where we left off, I'm curious about Gupta's views on the relationship between power and freedom.
Oh, yeah.
He seems to suggest that true freedom doesn't come from just indulging our every whim, but from mastering ourselves and our circumstances.
That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
We often think of freedom as the ability to just do whatever we want.
Yeah.
But Gupta's saying that true freedom comes from discipline and self-control.
He argues that constantly pursuing pleasure can actually lead to a kind of enslavement to our desires.
Interesting.
He even draws a parallel between addiction and the pursuit of material wealth.
Okay.
Suggesting that both can trap us in a cycle of craving and dissatisfaction.
So he's saying that true freedom is about breaking free from those external forces that try to control us, like our desires, our addictions, even societal expectations.
Exactly. He contrasts that with the kind of freedom that comes from discipline, self-control, and pursuing those really meaningful goals.
Okay.
He uses the example of physical fitness, arguing that the process of pushing yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, can lead to a sense of empowerment and agency.
He uses that great line. Say you start doing something and you start failing, getting back up and doing it. Very painful.
Yeah.
But say it starts working out, you're much more motivated.
Exactly.
It's a perfect example.
Right.
He's suggesting that overcoming challenges and pushing ourselves beyond our limits, whether physical or mental, can lead to that greater sense of freedom and self-mastery.
Precisely. And he argues that this self-mastery is crucial not just for individual well-being,
Right.
but also for creating positive change in the world.
That's a powerful idea.
It is.
He's connecting personal growth to societal progress.
He is. He even suggests that the suppression of individual freedom can have those negative consequences for society as a whole.
Okay, interesting.
He believes that stifling of individuality can lead to a decline in societal vitality and innovation.
And he sees this happening in both the East and the West, just in different ways.
Exactly. He points to India, where he believes individuality has always been under attack. He contrasts this with the West, where he sees masculinity under fire.
Okay.
His point is that both extremes,
right,
suppressing individuality in the East and masculinity in the West, can be detrimental to a society's overall well-being.
It's a fascinating perspective.
Yeah.
He's not taking sides in the culture wars.
Right.
But rather pointing out that the pendulum can swing too far in either direction.
Exactly. He seems to be advocating for a balance between individual freedom and social responsibility, suggesting that both are necessary for a society to truly thrive.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This all ties back to his emphasis on finding balance, like we were talking about before.
Right.
Between individual desires and societal expectations, between material wealth and spiritual fulfillment.
You've hit the nail on the head.
It seems like it's a recurring theme for him.
It is. He's urging us to move beyond simplistic either-or thinking and embrace the complexities and nuances of the human experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a call to think critically and to find our own unique path to personal power and freedom.
And speaking of cultural differences,
right,
Gupta has some really intriguing observations about those as well.
Like what? What does he say?
Well, he makes this fascinating distinction between cultures that prioritize individual rights and those that emphasize social duty.
That's a key difference between many Eastern and Western societies, isn't it?
It is, the individual versus the collective.
Exactly.
And he argues that this difference in values has this really profound impact on people's worldviews, their relationships, and their roles in society.
I can see how that would influence everything from parenting styles to views on leadership and success.
Precisely. He even suggests that these cultural differences can affect a society's levels of innovation and entrepreneurship.
Oh, interesting. How so?
He uses the example of India, where he believes that really strong emphasis on social duty can sometimes stifle individual creativity and risk-taking.
So he sees that as a potential downside of collectivist cultures.
He does. He contrasts it with the West, where there's a greater emphasis on individual expression and self-reliance, which he believes can foster that innovation and entrepreneurship. But as always, he cautions against romanticizing either extreme.
Right, finding that balance, like we were saying before.
Right. He argues that both individualism and collectivism have their strengths and weaknesses. He seems to be advocating for a more nuanced approach that recognizes the value of both individual and collective well-being.
So he's not saying that one culture is inherently better than another.
Right.
But that we can learn from each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. And he challenges us to consider how our own cultural backgrounds shape our perceptions and beliefs.
That makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in our own worldview.
It is. He even suggests that the increasingly globalized world is leading to a clash of cultures.
Okay, how so?
As different values and ways of life are coming into contact with each other more and more, he uses the term ideological corruption to describe those negative consequences of this clash.
And what does he mean by ideological corruption?
He's talking about the confusion,
the
conflict, and the decline in social cohesion that can result when different cultures with very different values are forced to coexist.
That's a really good point.
It's a complex issue. He points to the rise of identity politics and political polarization as evidence of this trend.
Right. So he's saying we need to find a way to bridge these cultural divides and develop a shared understanding of what it means to be human in this increasingly globalized world.
He's challenging us to move beyond those simplistic us versus them narratives. And embrace the richness and complexity of human diversity.
That's a tall order.
It is.
But it's definitely something to strive for.
It is. And he even suggests that learning from other cultures can help us better understand our own strengths and weaknesses.
I can see that. How so?
He shares a striking example. When I go to America, I see you all parentless and alone, And I feel this spiritual poverty that you guys have.
That's a powerful statement.
It is.
It highlights how different cultures prioritize different values.
Yeah.
And how those priorities can have a significant impact on our experiences and perceptions.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He's not saying that one culture is inherently better than another,
right?
But that we can all benefit from stepping outside of our own cultural bubbles and learning from each other.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to stay open-minded.
It is. So he's encouraging us to approach cultural differences with curiosity, humility, rather than judgment or fear.
It's a call to embrace our shared humanity, even as we celebrate our own unique cultural identities.
Precisely. And he believes that this kind of open-mindedness and cultural exchange can be a source of strength and innovation for societies.
That's an optimistic perspective.
It is.
Suggesting that by learning from each other and working together, we can create a more vibrant and harmonious world.
Exactly. It reminds us that diversity, when approached with understanding and respect, can be a powerful catalyst for progress.
Now, Gupta also makes some bold predictions about the future of spirituality in the world.
Yeah, he's not shy about sharing his thoughts.
He isn't.
What does he say?
He argues that as societies become more prosperous and technologically advanced, there's going to be this inevitable search for deeper meaning and purpose.
Interesting. So he sees that as a natural progression.
He does. He even suggests that this search might lead to a revival of traditional religions.
Oh, wow.
Or the emergence of new forms of spiritual practice.
That's fascinating. It's interesting that he sees this happening even as technology advances.
Yeah.
We often think of technology and spirituality as being kind of at odds with each other.
Right, but he challenges that assumption.
Okay.
He believes that technology, while potentially distracting, can also be a tool for spiritual exploration and connection.
He even uses the term spiritual rationality to describe this emerging trend.
And what does he mean by spiritual rationality?
He's talking about a kind of spirituality that's grounded in both reason and intuition.
Okay.
A spirituality that embraces both scientific inquiry and the search for deeper meaning.
So it's not about rejecting science or technology, but about integrating them with our spiritual aspirations.
Exactly. He believes that science and spirituality can complement each other.
I can see that.
Each offering those valuable insights into the nature of reality and our place in it.
And he sees this as a positive development.
He does. He believes that this spiritual revival, driven by both reason and intuition, has the potential to bring greater meaning, purpose, and connection to people's lives.
That's a hopeful vision for the future.
It is. It's a reminder that even in an increasingly complex and technologically driven world, our spiritual needs remain as important as ever. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Gupta's perspective encourages us to embrace both the material and spiritual aspects of our lives, finding that balance that allows us to thrive in all dimensions of our being.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, given his observations about the decline of empires and civilizations, I'm curious to hear his thoughts on what we can do to prevent such a decline in our own time.
It's a big question, isn't it?
It is. What'd he say?
Well, he doesn't just attribute decline to those external factors like war or invasion. He argues that the seeds of decay are often sown from within.
He's talking about those internal factors we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
Like complacency, loss of shared values, erosion of leadership.
He uses a powerful analogy. A tree that grows too large and top-heavy, eventually collapsing under its own weight.
It's a vivid image that captures the fragility of even the most powerful empires and institutions.
It is. And he believes that even those successes that lead to a civilization's rise can, if left unchecked, contribute to its downfall.
Oh, that's interesting.
In what way? He argues that material prosperity and technological advancements, while initially beneficial, can lead to a decline in moral fiber, loss of purpose, and a weakening of those social bonds.
So like too much of a good thing.
In a way, he even points to the example of ancient Rome, where the influx of wealth and luxury contributed to a weakening of the empire's foundations.
It's a cautionary tale.
It is. It suggests that material progress without a corresponding emphasis on values and social cohesion can ultimately be self-defeating.
Yeah, almost like backfiring.
Exactly. He describes this process as a gradual erosion of those values and standards that once made a society great. He even uses the term cultural hegemony to describe how the ruling elite can use their power to shape public opinion and suppress dissent.
And this can lead to a decline in critical thinking and a weakening of that social fabric.
He believes so. He offers a striking example, quoting both Marx and Gramsci. Marx said famously, "Religion is the opium of the people." Gramsci said, "Also sports, also entertainment is what we use to enslave the gladiatorial combat," all that. It's just, it keeps people away from thinking about their suffering so they don't overthrow the bosses, right?
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
He's suggesting that even seemingly benign forms of entertainment and distraction can be used to manipulate and control the masses.
He is.
Yeah.
And he argues that this kind of cultural manipulation, when combined with other factors like complacency and a loss of shared values, can create the conditions for a civilization's decline.
It's a complex interplay of forces.
It is.
It sounds like he's saying that decline is rarely caused by a single factor, but rather a confluence of internal and external pressures.
That's a key point. He believes it's often a slow and gradual process.
Okay.
A gradual unraveling of the social, cultural, and moral fabric that holds a society together.
So it's not just about those external threats.
Right.
But about the internal strength and resilience of a society.
Exactly. What do you think we can do to bolster that strength and resilience?
Yeah, it's a big question.
It is. He argues that we need to be vigilant in safeguarding the values, the institutions, and those social bonds that are essential for a society's long-term health and well-being.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He emphasizes the importance of critical thinking, civic engagement, and a commitment to the common good.
It sounds like he's calling for a renewed focus on individual responsibility and civic virtue.
He is. He believes that a healthy society requires citizens who are informed, engaged, and willing to hold their leaders accountable.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
Especially in our current age of rapid change and uncertainty.
Right. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of our societies.
Exactly. Now, given his concerns about the decline of the West, I'm curious to hear his thoughts on the challenges facing masculinity in the modern world.
It's a topic he seems to have strong opinions about.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah. He doesn't shy away from discussing that controversial topic of declining testosterone levels, particularly in men in the West.
What are his thoughts on this?
He argues that this decline isn't just a biological phenomenon, but a cultural one as well.
What does he mean by that?
Well, he suggests that factors like diet, lifestyle, and a lack of purpose are all contributing to this trend.
Okay.
He also points to the feminization of men as a potential factor, arguing that the suppression of those traditionally masculine traits can have a negative impact on men's hormonal balance and overall well-being.
He uses that rather strong phrase, to control a generation, you would go after the men of that generation because that's the demographic that is capable of being violent.
It's a provocative statement.
It is.
It highlights the historical role of men as warriors and protectors. He's suggesting that this capacity for violence, while potentially destructive, is also a source of strength and vitality that's being undermined in modern society.
So he seems to be saying that men are being stripped of their natural masculinity. And that this has negative consequences for both men and society as a whole.
He does. And he even argues that the decline in testosterone is leading to a decrease in men's drive, ambition, and risk-taking behavior.
Interesting.
He contrasts this with the situation in India, where he believes masculinity is not under attack to the same extent.
And he attributes that to the more traditional gender roles that still prevail in India.
He suggests that in more collectivist cultures, men are still expected to fulfill those traditional roles as providers and protectors. But he acknowledges that this can also lead to pressure on men to conform to rigid gender norms, which can be limiting in its own way.
So he's not advocating for a return to traditional gender roles, but rather a more nuanced understanding of masculinity that embraces both strength and vulnerability.
Exactly. He seems to be arguing that men need to be allowed to express the full range of their emotions and experiences without fear of judgment or shame.
And he believes that suppressing that masculine energy can actually have negative consequences for society as a whole.
He does. He argues that men have a unique contribution to make to the world. And that their voices and perspectives are essential for addressing those complex challenges facing humanity.
It's a thought-provoking perspective.
It is.
He's challenging us to think critically about the role of masculinity in the modern world. and to find a way to embrace its positive aspects while also addressing its potential pitfalls.
Absolutely. He's calling for a more balanced and nuanced approach to gender that recognizes the value of both masculine and feminine qualities.
Now, shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about Gupta's role as a content creator.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect.
He's clearly aware of the power of media and technology to shape perceptions and influence behavior.
Right.
What are his thoughts on that?
He recognizes that this power can be used for both good and ill.
Right, it's a double-edged sword.
Exactly. He expresses concern about the rise of what he calls cultural hegemony, the way in which dominant groups can use media and technology to promote their own agendas and suppress dissenting voices.
That's a significant concern, especially in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with information and messages from all these different sources.
He gives a striking example.
Okay.
The U.S. has more than 800 military bases beyond its shores. It controls the whole world, the supply chains, everything. That's a geopolitical perspective.
Yeah.
But that idea of American exceptionalism has gone.
That's a really interesting point.
Right.
It highlights how power can be exercised not just through military force, but through cultural influence and economic control.
Exactly. He's arguing that we need to be aware of those subtle ways in which power operates in the world, particularly through media and technology.
Makes sense. And he connects this to the decline of American exceptionalism.
He does. He believes that the erosion of shared values and the weakening of institutions, combined with that pervasive influence of media and technology, have contributed to a decline in America's sense of national purpose and identity.
It's a complex and multifaceted issue.
It is.
But he's raising some valid concerns.
He is. And he doesn't shy away from expressing his opinions.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Even when they're controversial.
For example?
Well, he doesn't mince words when talking about the state of American society.
What does he say?
He states that there is a deep confusion happening in the American mind. Their entire population is being drugged by Chinese drugs, by the way. They're not even asking bloody, critical questions.
That's quite a statement. He's suggesting that Americans are becoming complacent, uncritical, allowing themselves to be manipulated by both internal and external forces.
That seems to be his view.
Like a bold stance to take.
It is. He's deeply concerned about the direction of Western society.
Okay.
And the potential for cultural and ideological forces to undermine its foundations.
Interesting.
He even draws a parallel between the decline of the Roman Empire and the current state of the West.
Okay.
Arguing that both civilizations became complacent. Lost their sense of purpose, and were ultimately overtaken by external forces.
It's a sobering comparison.
Yeah.
He's suggesting that history might be repeating itself.
Yeah.
And that the West could be headed for a similar fate if it doesn't wake up to the challenges it faces.
Exactly. And he even suggests that the influx of immigrants into the West might be contributing to this decline.
Okay.
Arguing that it's leading to a loss of cultural cohesion and a weakening of shared values.
That's a controversial statement.
It is. He's wading into that complex and often heated debate about immigration and its impact on society.
Yeah, he's not afraid to tackle tough topics.
He isn't. And while his views might not align with everyone's, he's challenging us to think critically about this issue and to consider its long-term consequences.
Makes sense.
He's not advocating for isolationism or xenophobia, but rather a more thoughtful and balanced approach to immigration that considers both the benefits and the challenges.
So he's saying that societies need to find a way to integrate newcomers while also preserving their own cultural heritage and values.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between openness and preservation, between welcoming diversity and maintaining a sense of shared identity.
Right. And he sees this as crucial for preventing the kind of cultural decline that he believes the West is currently experiencing.
He does. He's arguing that a strong sense of shared identity and values is essential for society's long-term health and resilience.
Okay, so now that we've talked about his concerns about the West, I'm curious to hear what he has to say about other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Particularly India. He seems to see a lot of potential in India.
He does. He even suggests that the decline of the West might be an opportunity for other civilizations like India to rise to prominence on the world stage.
It's like he's suggesting a shift in the balance of global power.
That's a bold prediction.
It is. What makes him think that?
He sees India as a nation with a rich spiritual tradition and a growing economic power, poised to play a more significant role in shaping the future of humanity.
Interesting. He even compares the current state of India to that of the United States in its early days.
He does.
Full of energy, ambition, and potential.
Exactly.
He's painting a very optimistic picture of India's future.
He is, but he also acknowledges those challenges India faces.
Right, like what?
Things like poverty, corruption, and social inequality.
Of course. So he's not blind to India's problems, but he believes that it has the potential to overcome them and become a major force in the world.
Exactly. He argues that India needs to find a way to balance its ancient traditions with the demands of the modern world, to harness its spiritual heritage while embracing technological advancement and economic growth.
It's a challenging balancing act.
It is.
But he seems to believe that India is up to the task.
He does, and he even suggests that India might be able to offer a new model for development.
Really?
One that combines economic growth with spiritual values and social harmony.
That's a compelling vision. It would be fascinating to see if India can indeed forge a new path.
It would.
One that avoids the pitfalls that he believes the West has fallen into.
And his insights offer a valuable perspective on the shifting global landscape and the challenges and opportunities facing humanity in the 21st century.
He challenges us to think critically about those forces shaping our world.
Yeah.
And to consider how we can contribute to creating a more just sustainable and fulfilling future for all.
And he reminds us that the power to shape our destiny ultimately lies within each of us.
That's a powerful message of hope and empowerment.
It is, and it's a call to action, to take responsibility for our own lives and to work together to create a better world.
Now, speaking of taking action, I'm curious to hear more about Gupta's specific advice on cultivating personal power.
That's a great question. He's talked about those 4 pillars: physical strength, intellect, material success, and spiritual depth. But does he offer any practical steps we can take to develop those areas?
Right, like how do we actually do that?
He does. He offers this piece of advice. Consistently do the same thing until the rewards of compounding start showing up.
Okay, so he's emphasizing the power of discipline and perseverance.
Exactly. He's saying that success is not about overnight breakthroughs, but about consistent effort over time.
He's talked about embracing the boring and mundane in pursuit of our goals.
He has. He's urging us to focus on building systems and routines that support our growth and development, even if those routines seem unexciting or repetitive at first.
So it's about developing the discipline to stick with something. Even when it's not glamorous or exciting?
Precisely. He believes that this kind of consistent effort over time will yield those significant rewards.
It's a powerful message about the importance of dedication and perseverance.
It is. And it's a reminder that true success is not just about talent or luck, but about hard work, discipline, and a willingness to embrace the process.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about his ideas on masculinity, cultural differences, and the decline of civilizations.
It's been a wide-ranging discussion.
It has. But I'm also curious to hear more about his personal journey.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's clearly someone who's done a lot of introspection and self-reflection.
He has.
What insights can he offer about the process of personal growth?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of self-awareness, arguing that the more we understand ourselves, the better equipped we are to make choices that align with our values and goals.
That makes sense. It's like that ancient Greek aphorism, know thyself.
Exactly. He believes that self-knowledge is that foundation of personal growth. He also stresses the importance of being honest with ourselves about our strengths and weaknesses.
He's not afraid to be vulnerable and talk about his own struggles and shortcomings.
He isn't, and that makes his message even more relatable.
It does, right?
Yeah. He's not presenting himself as some kind of guru who has all the answers.
Is he not preachy?
Not at all. He's someone who's on his own journey of self-discovery and is willing to share what he's learned along the way.
That's refreshing.
Yeah.
It makes him seem more human and approachable.
It does. And it also makes his message more powerful. Because it comes from a place of authenticity and experience.
He's not just talking about personal growth in the abstract. He's sharing his own story, his own struggles and triumphs.
Exactly.
Which makes his insights more relatable and inspiring.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes him such an effective communicator. He's able to connect with his audience on a personal level and inspire them to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery and growth.
Now, given his background in philosophy and psychology, I'm sure he has some interesting thoughts on those deeper questions of life.
He does.
What are some of the insights he offers about the meaning of existence, the purpose of life, and the pursuit of happiness and fulfillment?
He believes that we're all on a journey of self-discovery, and that the purpose of life is to evolve, to grow, and to become the best versions of ourselves.
It's about reaching our full potential.
Exactly. He encourages us to explore different paths, experiment with different ways of being, and to embrace the challenges and opportunities that life throws our way.
It sounds like he's advocating for a growth mindset.
He is.
A willingness to learn and adapt throughout our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He believes that stagnation is the enemy of fulfillment. And that we need to constantly challenge ourselves, both intellectually and emotionally.
That makes sense. And what about happiness? What are his thoughts on how to achieve lasting happiness and fulfillment?
Well, he doesn't believe that happiness is a destination, but rather a journey, a process of continual growth and self-discovery.
Interesting. So it's not about reaching a certain point, but about the journey itself.
Exactly. He emphasizes the importance of aligning our actions with our values.
Exactly. He believes that when we use our creativity to serve something greater than ourselves, it becomes this powerful force for good in the world.
It's not just about creating for the sake of creating, but about using our creativity to make a positive impact.
Exactly. It's fascinating how he sees creativity as a tool for positive change.
It's a powerful perspective. He believes that creativity can be harnessed to address social problems, to promote sustainability, and to create a more just and equitable world. He even suggests that creativity might play a role in the evolution of human consciousness, helping us to transcend our limitations and to connect to a deeper sense of purpose and meaning.
It's a hopeful vision.
It is.
One that reminds us that we all have the potential to contribute to a better future through our creative endeavors.
Precisely. He's urging us to embrace our creative gifts and to use them to make a difference in the world.
Now, shifting gears again.
Okay.
I'm intrigued by Gupta's perspective on spirituality.
Yeah, it's a fascinating aspect of his thinking.
It is. He seems to define it quite broadly, not just in terms of traditional religion.
You're right. He argues that spirituality is not just about religion or belief systems, but about connecting to a deeper sense of meaning, purpose, and connection to something greater than ourselves.
So he's talking about a more universal human experience.
Exactly.
Something that transcends those specific doctrines or rituals.
He even suggests that spirituality is a fundamental human need. Just as important as our physical, emotional, and mental needs.
It's like he's saying that we're all wired for connection, not just to each other, but to something beyond ourselves. Something that gives our lives meaning and purpose.
He draws on a really wide range of sources.
I was like, what?
From ancient wisdom traditions to modern psychology and neuroscience to explore the nature of spirituality.
It's interesting that he's able to integrate those different perspectives, finding those common threads that run through both ancient wisdom and modern science.
He does. He even suggests that spirituality might be hardwired into our brains, an evolutionary adaptation that helped our ancestors to survive and thrive.
So it's not just a philosophical concept, but something that's deeply rooted in our biology, our very nature as human beings.
He believes so, but he also acknowledges those challenges of spirituality in the modern world.
He's talked about how those constant distractions and pressures of modern life can make it difficult to connect with our spiritual side.
He has. He argues that the modern world often distracts us from our spiritual needs, bombarding us with information, stimulation, and consumerism.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like we're constantly being pulled outwards towards the material world and away from our inner selves.
He's talked about that tension.
He has. He describes it as a kind of spiritual crisis that many people are experiencing, feeling lost, disconnected, and searching for meaning.
It's a sense of emptiness, a void that can't be filled by material possessions or external achievements.
Exactly. But he doesn't just diagnose the problem. He offers solutions as well.
What are some of the things he suggests we can do to cultivate our spirituality?
Well, he encourages us to spend time in nature, to connect with our communities, to practice mindfulness and meditation, and to engage in activities that nourish our souls.
So it's about finding those practices and experiences that help us to connect with a deeper sense of peace, purpose, and connection.
Exactly. He even suggests that we might find spiritual inspiration in art.
Okay.
Music, literature, and even our everyday experiences.
Yeah, finding the sacred in the ordinary.
Precisely. So it's not about following a rigid set of rules or beliefs, but about finding what resonates with us individually, what helps us to feel more connected to something larger than ourselves.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But he also emphasizes the importance of living in alignment with our spiritual values.
He does. It's about walking the walk,
Right.
not just talking the talk.
Putting our spiritual beliefs into action in our daily lives.
Exactly. He argues that when we live authentically and act with integrity, we naturally radiate a sense of peace, joy, and purpose.
It's about embodying our spiritual values in our thoughts, words, and actions.
Precisely. He even suggests that spirituality is not about escaping from the world.
Interesting.
But about engaging with it more fully and compassionately.
So it's about bringing our spiritual awareness into our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Using it to guide our choices and interactions.
He's advocating for a holistic approach to spirituality. One that integrates our spiritual practices with our everyday lives.
It's about finding that balance between our inner and outer worlds.
Right.
Between our spiritual aspirations and our engagement with the material world.
Exactly. And he reminds us that the journey of spiritual growth is an ongoing one.
Right.
Full of twists and turns, challenges and triumphs.
It's a lifelong adventure.
It is a
process of continual discovery and transformation.
Exactly. He encourages us to embrace the journey with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to learn and grow.
This has been an incredible deep dive into Prakhar Gupta's worldview.
It has been a fascinating journey.
It's clear that he's a deep thinker, someone who's really grappled with those big questions of life and come away with some profound insights.
He's a unique voice.
He is. He's a fascinating blend of philosopher, psychologist, social commentator, and entrepreneur.
He wears a lot of hats.
He does. Someone who's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom and offer a fresh perspective on the challenges and opportunities of our time.
I think he really encourages people to think differently.
He does.
Hey.
He's given us a lot to think about.
He has.
From the importance of personal power and freedom to the challenges of navigating cultural differences and the search for meaning and purpose in a rapidly changing world.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. Yeah. But I think he's given us the tools to do it.
I agree. He's left us with a sense of hope and empowerment, a belief that we can create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.
He's reminded us that the power to shape our destiny lies within each of us.
Exactly.
And that by cultivating our strengths, embracing our challenges, and living in alignment with our values, we can create a world that's more just, compassionate, and fulfilling for all.
It's a powerful message.
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of Prakhar Gupta.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it as thought-provoking and inspiring as we have.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep striving to become the best version of yourself.